Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Dee.
We are finding healing after leaving a cult.
We will be discussing abuse and personal experience with the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental churches.
Trigger warning. This podcast may contain descriptions of various forms of abuse. Please take care for your safety and well-being while you are listening.
If the content becomes too much for you to handle, please turn this off. We hope to expose harmful teachings that lead to and justify abuse,
with the hope that those that are experiencing abuse can find support and escape from it.
Hey, Marcy.
Hi, Dee.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a recorded session of Umbrella Rebellion.
Yes.
It's been so long. So, Marcy and I were talking about it, and we thought a good topic for our podcast episode today would be going no contact. And one of the reasons is because recently I have gone no contact with a family member. And because this family member does actually watch the podcast, I'm not going to divulge any of the reasons behind it on my own personal story. I don't want to cause drama. They are fully aware of the reasons why I have gone no contact, and at this moment they are respecting my boundaries, and I'm grateful for that. I went ahead and just kind of did a broad, I guess, poll of the recovery groups that I'm in and was like, "Hey, what would you have wanted to know before you went no contact?" Because I know everybody that's watching this podcast is in a different, I guess, phase of their recovery, and you may be already no contact. You may be considering no contact, or it might not even been a thought that you've had because you didn't know you could choose to go no contact. So we just wanted to go over what no contact can look like, because there's different kinds of no contact, right? It doesn't have to be full no contact. What some survivors wish they had known before they went no contact. Also, we're going to talk about the pros cons of going no contact and tips on getting through it, and things that you may not have considered that you might want to do before you go no contact that some people said in some of the posts that they commented on. I wish I would have done this. So we're going to share all that with you today. So make sure that you definitely listen to the end, because we're going to be talking about those steps that you may want to consider before you go no contact. So let's dive into it. Marcy, do you have any experience with this?
I do, with my ex-husband, not with family related to the cult. But I do remember when it was first suggested to me by my counselor that I go no contact, I was surprised that that was an option. Like it hadn't even occurred to me that I could do that. And so that was one of the things I really resonated with some of the comments on the groups. So didn't know it was an option. And I didn't know how to prepare. I knew about safety plans, but it didn't occur to me to prepare before you go no contact, or what to expect afterwards. Like people, not just the person's reaction, but family members' reactions to it. So what either side, because at this point, it's her side and his side, what each side, how they would handle that too. And kind of prepare my heart and mind for what their reaction would be to me if I did do that. And then it took a lot of practice when I did go no contact to not respond. To not respond. That, I think, was the hardest thing for me, was not responding, because you want so badly to defend yourself if they're being unkind, or if they're making threats, which was in my case, or if they're just being ugly. You want to defend yourself. So that was a hard thing to learn too. It took a lot of time to build that muscle to not respond or not feel guilty that I wasn't responding. That because in our culture, not responding to someone was never acceptable. You didn't not respond to someone that was talking to you. That was considered really, really rude. And so I
Right.
felt like a really bad person for not responding to them. At least
Right.
like, I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah. So for me, the first person that I went no contact with was also my ex. The one thing I noticed the most was the amount of anxiety that I had when that contact was being made, when it wasn't there anymore. And so
Mhm.
not having that constant, when is it going to happen? What is going, and have to constantly navigate those back and forth was such a relief for my anxiety. Since I've want no contact with another family member recently, having that experience and going through that with that one person really helped me stand my ground with this other no contact, because I had practice, right? I had
Mhm.
done some of the things wrong. I had slipped up and I had navigated it very turbulently the first time. So this time it was like, nope, boundary done, not happening. Although there was guilt and there was a lot of emotional struggles, they were a lot less than I expected. And I could rest in knowing that this may just be for a season and it might not
Yes.
necessarily be forever, right? But it could be forever. We just never know how the other person is going to react or if they're going to do what you need them to do to restore things. So, yeah.
Mhm.
So, our first kind of topic is what no contact can look like. Marcy, you want to take that one?
Right. So if you see me looking sideways, that's notes. So no contact could be absolutely none whatsoever. Like you take them out of your phone. You don't even that helped me to block the number. So that way even though I wasn't responding, I couldn't see what they were saying. And that took a long time for me to get there. Second one would be limited contact. You choose what your boundaries are, and then you only respond for those things. So I did never do this, so I don't have any specifics. Dee, do you have a specific on limited contact?
So, I guess there are some limitations to the contact that we have because I do have children and this person is connected to my children by family. And so there have been times when there has been communication when it involves a child. This person is not unsafe for my children to be around. And two of my children that are biologically related to this person are adults. So they get to decide what their relationship looks like. I don't have any say so in it, right? For the most part, I put the burden on the other family member to foster that relationship with my child. I'm not the middleman anymore. But if there's an instance where there needs to be communication, I will communicate because it involves my child. For the most part, it's a no contact for me. For instance, let's say you have a family member that you've said, "Don't talk to me, don't call me," but you just had a birthday that came up and they send you a happy birthday message. Are they breaking the no contact, right? Well, kind of, but also you don't necessarily have to respond and you can decide how you feel about that contact, whether you feel like it's a break of that boundary that you made, or if it was just, well, it would be hard for that person not to acknowledge your birthday, right? And like let it pass. So it's kind of your own personal limitations on what you can accept as limited or no contact.
Yeah. So what I would suggest would be before you go limited contact, make a list of what you're wanting to limit. And that way you can have a list. When I was in the panic moment of, oh, this person has messaged me and they're not supposed to be messaging me, or I want to not have contact with them or limited contact with them, it helped me to look or remember and have it written down why or what I was willing to do. That way your brain doesn't go into trauma mode and shut down on you, and then you end up responding when you shouldn't. So,
Clear boundaries, either that
yeah.
you don't necessarily
Mhm.
have to tell the other person, right? You
No,
can have it
no,
just for
just for you.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, of what you're willing to engage in and what you're not
Mhm.
willing to engage in. And then also, if you feel the need to, you can have clear boundaries of this is what I'm willing to contact you for. This is what you are, allowed to contact me for.
Mhm.
And you can share that with the person if you feel the need to, or if you think they'll receive it. It's kind of a case by case basis.
It really is. It's so specific to the person and the family or the whoever you're going no contact with. Yes. Hmm. And if you have a main person that you're going no contact with, but if they're connected to other family members that you still want to have contact with, you need to think through those scenarios too. An example like a parent, if you're wanting to go no contact with, say, a mom or a dad, but you still have siblings that you want to stay in contact with, you need to think through that too.
Yeah, how you're gonna navigate those things and
Mhm.
communicate to your siblings, "Hey, I'm going no contact with this parent. I just wanted to let you know. You don't have to feel obligated to invite me to things that involve this parent." Like, for instance, I have other parties involved in this no contact, and we've come to an agreement on how we're going to communicate about this person and whether we communicate about it at all, right? And then just trying to not mess up other relationships because this other person is not safe for you, right?
Right. Or even telling the people that you are still in contact with, like with going no contact, they sometimes try to get to other people and ask them questions. So if you share, let's use the parent sibling example again. If you share with a sibling and the sibling tells the parent, and the parent will make them the middleman. They will say, "What's going on with them? We want to know. Tell us all about it." That so you may need to put boundaries in place with siblings too. Say, just don't talk about me to them. That way you're not in the middle ground. That's
Right. And prepare your sibling to protect
Mhm.
themselves in that
Right.
situation as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it puts them in a bad position too. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that could be with any family member, but that with our example.
Yeah. And typically in our cases, it's a parent child relationship that we go no contact with. But there are circumstances where it may be a different family member. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it could be. Okay, so we said no contact, limited contact, contact with clear boundaries. So that would be your list. And then communicate what it will take to repair and improve the relationship. So if you see in the future, possibly if that person decides to change and you want to reestablish communication, then have that as a clear boundary for them. And I would say treat it like a toddler, short
Right.
sentences, statements, short statements of what it would take.
So, for example, in our community, there are a lot of LGBTQ members. I'm one of them. For example, let's just say that the parents are still in the fundamental world and they are not accepting of that. So, a clear communication of what it will take to repair this relationship is to accept me for who I am. You can disagree with me all you want, but stop trying to change me, right? Like, you're not going to change this about me. And so, my criteria to fix this relationship on your end is for you to accept me for who I am. If you cannot do that, then we cannot have a relationship, right? Something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This would probably fall under limited contact, but create a separate way for them to contact you on a device that you don't have on you all the time. So that way it's not in your face all the time. So that would be the limited contact, probably.
So I have kind of a example of this. I know someone who made the boundary of you can only contact me by email. But every time their phone went off with a new email, they would be like so panic ridden and just maybe it's from that person, right? And so my advice to them was create a specific email just for that person and put it on a device you don't access all the time and don't have it on you. And you get to decide when you go and you're ready and you're willing to open that communication with that person. So it's on your terms and not always on their terms. And then if the thought of communication being presented to you is anxiety ridden, you relieve yourself of that constant what if it's them, right? And then trying to prepare yourself for whatever response that you're going to have to make and then making a response in haste and in that, like Marcy said, in that trauma mode, because a lot of times you get triggered when these things happen, right? Or when you get a text. And I actually have this as a boundary for one of my children. I have a different text tone for that child because I was noticing that if I did not know if it was that child or not, my anxiety was getting up because I wasn't sure, like, if I needed to address something right then and right there. So when I hear that tone, I can go, okay, that's that child. Let me open up the thing, see if it's an urgent matter. If it's not, I can put it aside. But if it's not that tone, I can ignore the text until I'm ready. So I'm not constantly every text that I get looking at my phone, right? So it was something that I needed to do for myself to relieve the constant anxiety of every text notification.
Yes, very, very good.
Okay, so our next topic we're going to talk about is what we wish we had known before we went no contact. And a lot of these submissions are from different people from the recovery groups, and I collected all of their responses and I was like, "Ooh, that's a good point. Ooh, that's a good point. Let's talk about that."
Yes.
Because, I'm still navigating this new no contact, right? And it's a different kind of dynamic than I had before. So it's like trying to figure out exactly how to navigate this. And sometimes I wish I would have known some of these things before I'd gone on contact this time, you know? We don't always get there. So we're hoping that this will help you if you haven't gone no contact yet. So, the number one thing that I saw was that you actually have the choice to go no contact. Like some people were like, I finally realized that this was a choice I actually had. Like Marcy had explained earlier, it's so common in the way that we were taught that no contact would be disrespect, right? And so knowing that you can do what's good for yourself and you don't always have to be the martyr or the one to suffer for other people, and you actually have the power to make that choice to cut off the people who are harming you. If you didn't know you had that choice, you do now.
You do now. So what I don't remember if the counselor was the one that told me or if it was just something that occurred to me later, but I was saying I feel like it's disrespectful if I don't, at least let a little bit of communication happen. And she said, but how much are you being disrespected by what's being communicated? And it hadn't even occurred to me that I deserved respect too.
Right?
And that I deserve to not have to deal with that level of ugliness all the time.
Right. Right. That would be back to the if you cannot speak to me respectfully, we will not be speaking, right?
Yes.
What it
Yes.
takes to repair that, right? So overwhelmingly, like, I mean, at least 90% of the responses were like, "I wished I would have done it sooner." So,
Mhm.
yes,
Yes.
a lot of us have hemmed and hawed and, "Oh, maybe it'll be okay," it into oblivion, and then we finally get to the point where we're just like, "There is absolutely no hope. This is never gonna fix it. Fine, I'll do it." Like, it's a last resort. It doesn't have to be. If you don't feel like you are getting the progress that you need in your recovery, I would say try it out. See if going no contact helps you. And no contact doesn't have to last forever. It's on your terms, right? But you have to be prepared that the other person may react by cutting you off permanently when you do it. So, there's some preparation that you need to do before you make that decision, definitely. But you don't have to exhaust every single option and be a shell of yourself before you make that decision. You can do it whenever you're ready and whenever you've
Yes.
made the appropriate steps to gather what you need before you do it, right?
Right. So I have a little subset of that. So I went no contact. I didn't ever respond, never. But I left the ability to see their messages coming in. So, and those messages came in for 2 years after I went
Wow.
no contact. But I left it open so that I could see what they were saying, but I never responded back. That took me longer to stop watching and seeing where they were at. Now, for a while, it was a temperature meter for me. I felt like it was to check for safety. It really wasn't. So that took me even longer to let go of, to be able to see
Mhm.
those messages coming in. But when I finally quit and I finally blocked it, then my anxiety levels went way
Oh,
down
yeah.
and I entered safety. And then life just got so much better. It got so
Right?
much better. Hmm.
Yeah. So another point that they made about going no contact sooner was it made more space for them to heal, and they were able to work on themselves much, much easier without that interference. And then some people realized that their healing couldn't even start till they went no contact because they were constantly being triggered or they were being re-traumatized and all of that. So, something to consider for sure.
Yes. Yeah. It is really hard to heal when you're in constant state of fight or flight or fawn or freeze. Any of those. It's almost impossible.
Absolutely. So the next thing that we noticed was a lot of people talked about the false sense of guilt for going no contact. And we kind of talked about that. In our world, it's very common for no contact to be looked at as disrespect. And then you feel guilty because you feel like you're disrespecting your family member or your friend or whatever. And although guilt is a feeling you'll have to process, you don't have to have guilt for going no contact and protecting yourself. This is a preservation thing. This is not out of spite. Some people can do it out of spite, but typically when you go in no contact, it is to preserve your own health and well-being. And so you don't have to feel guilty for doing that for yourself.
I think one of my things was the only no contact that I had ever experienced or seen or watched other family members go through was out of spite. It was a manipulation tactic. It was a way
Oh,
to
yeah.
control that other person. And so doing the same thing myself felt like that. When it wasn't. It was protection, but that's the only way I'd ever seen it modeled. And so it felt like control.
Right, right. Yeah. So
Mhm,
it definitely can be used to manipulate, but the
mhm.
point of this type of no contact is for self-preservation
Yeah,
and for healing, not to try to manipulate others. That's just
exactly.
manipulation. That's not
Yes.
no contact.
Yeah, exactly, which is probably why you're going no contact in the first place. Uh,
Right.
yes. Okay, so the next one is the grief over a
Mm.
lost relationship or the possibility that it might remain lost forever if you go no contact. There is always that possibility and walking through the stages of grief for that. So one of their statements was to understand that they will never be the person that you need or want. If you're working toward that healing, then that needs to be an understanding.
Right. So grieving the
Mhm,
loss of that relationship, whatever it
mhm,
was, whether it was parent, sibling, friend, you know, distant relative, whatever, that you're never going to have your idea of what that person should be for you, right? Especially when it comes to a parent. Like we all have an idea of what a parent should be. And when they don't meet those needs that you have, when they are abusive towards you and they do harm you, it's often a grief process of that loss of relationship. And I can relate to that through my divorce, right? Like I grieved what I thought my life was going to be
mhm,
because I was never going to get it with that person. And I even did that before I got divorced. And I had to come to the realization that that's not what I want my life to be. And so I started that grief process before I got divorced because I was like, I'm never going to have that life that I wanted. I'm never going to have that partner that I imagined. I'm never going to have the partner that I need. I'm definitely not gonna have the one I want in that person. And so, that can be applied to a parent, right? Like your idea of what you wanted in a parent or even what you need in a parent, you can grieve that loss. Grief can be very overwhelming and it is a process and there's no timeline on it. So, getting the supports in place to deal with that, we'll talk about later.
yes. Yes.
So, and then one of the points that we saw common in these responses was how it's going to affect relationships outside of the person you're going no contact with. So Marcia talked about in a parent situation with siblings, preparing them for you going no contact and how that's going to affect them putting protections in place to not become the middleman. Like for me, with the family member that I got no contact with the other family members, like, this is what I can and can't talk to you about. And I don't want you to be the middleman either. And so if I tell you something, I'd ask that you keep it confidential. They don't get to know about my life because they didn't do what I needed them to do.
So one of their points was that others may not understand why you did it, whether that they're in denial or whether they just don't have enough details. They just don't understand it. They may be angry with members outside of this, one person that you're going to no contact with. They may be angry with you for doing it. Had to deal with that. And they can still, even years down the road, be angry with me and speak to me in an angry way because of it. And so got to be prepared for backlash on several different fronts. And then it may be
Right.
continuous. Hmm.
Right. Like, why won't you contact them? It would be so much easier if you just talk to them. Oh, they're such a good so and so. They're such a good parent. They're such a good aunt. They're such a good, blah, blah, blah. Why can't you just get over it and move on? Nobody's perfect. All of those things that we
All those
hear.
things.
Yeah. And be prepared that other people are going to have an opinion about your choice to go no contact with this family member or friend or whatever it is. And they may think that you're unreasonable, that it isn't reasonable for you to go no contact with this person. Like, how dare you? What did they do that was so wrong? And a lot of people don't know the amounts of hurts that you have gotten from the person you're going no contact with. And they'll never know. Even if you share some of the things, they may not never fully understand because everybody is affected by harms, abuse differently. Just be prepared that this isn't going to just stop at this relationship, that there's other things that you're going to have to navigate on top of that. And you have to get prepared for that.
Yes. I think something that was surprising to me was that I thought that I had good relationships, close relationships, even with these other people. And that when I went no contact, it came to light how very surface level those
Mhm.
relationships were. I thought they were deep and I thought that they would understand and that they would have my back, and they didn't. So the level of their anger toward me was surprising to me, and it hurt a lot. That's another thing that you will have to grieve, is the loss of those things. Or what you thought wasn't the reality. I thought I was living was not what it really
Oh,
was. Hmm.
right? Right.
Yeah.
Like you thought your life was one thing and when you stepped out of it, you're like, "Whoa,
Yes.
that's not what that was."
No, I was living a lie, and it still comes up sometimes. I still, whoa, okay, yeah. Mhm.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That shiny happy people.
Yes,
Everything's
yes,
great. Everything's wonderful. No, it's not.
no, it's not.
Oh, another thing that I just it came to mind is there actually might be people who agree with your no contact
Mhm.
and they will use that to vent their own feelings about that person. And you also have to be prepared for some things that they may say that'll be harmful, to you because you still care for the person that you're no contact with. And you have to be like, okay, I get it. You agree with me, but that was taking it too far. For example, if somebody came to me one day, hypothetically, and this is a long time ago, this is not about this person that I just went no contact with, to make that clear. They said, "Do you want me to take care of it?" Wink, wink.
Yes.
And I
Mhm.
was like, "No,
No.
no,
No.
no, I don't want you to do that."
Mhm.
Because people know people that are capable of things that I wouldn't even entertain. And so, it's like that's a boundary that is clear to me. That is not acceptable. You cannot take care of them in a permanent way at all. And being prepared for people to have some very, very strong feelings about how someone hurt you and their response to that and
So
what you're okay with. So,
this is just in case you think it's just a one-time story from a long time ago with Dee. I had the same multiple people say the same thing to me. So this is not an uncommon reaction.
So that was an interesting navigation of people wanting to permanently resolve your issues
Mhm.
and being prepared to respond to that.
So next, the benefits of going no contact. So now we've talked about what you need to be prepared for. Here are some things that people said were the benefits that they found from it, the positive side of it, the silver lining. The first one was more peace.
Right?
It just frees up so much bandwidth to not have that anxiety level there all the time.
For
Uh,
sure.
yep. Less stress, anxiety, and drama. Oh my goodness, how much drama are we
Right?
constantly dealing with in relation to these things? So much drama. And I think for me, I did not realize how much time it was eating up
Mhm.
each and every day, like every day, how
Yeah.
much time it was eating up for me to see the message, process the message, talk to people about the message, how should I respond to the message, and then type out the message and then send it, and then I started the whole cycle over again by the response to that message.
Right?
Poof, I have all this time. Mhm.
Right? So when you took that contact out, the amount of time that you had free was
Yes.
overwhelmingly apparent. Like, oh my God, I was spending that much time.
Yes.
Like, what am I going to do with myself now? Right?
We can actually sit down and watch a show
Right?
with this
I
after I put the
do.
kids to bed.
Right. I do recall that as well. Like, oh, wow, I was spending so much of my day in this whirlwind of, like you said, processing the communication, figuring out how you're going to respond to it, responding to it, and then get a response to that, and then having to do it all over again. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It was a vicious cycle.
What it
Yeah.
was. And the relief that you get from not having to do that, it's like,
Mhm.
you can take a deep breath and relax and go, "What do I wanna do with my life? Because 'Cause I'm not booked up anymore."
Yes. Uh-huh. So on that note, the mental health or even the physical health that will return because you don't have that level of anxiety and stress. And I think just recently it has come to light for me how those years of being in such fight or flight have
Mm,
taken a toll
mhm.
on my health, and how much now that I'm in safety mode, like securely, and several years into safety mode, how my body is still dealing with that. And so the quicker you do it, the less you might have to deal with that later in life because it will come back to bite you later. So
The long-lasting effects of the constant stress.
yes, and sometimes
Mhm,
irreversible.
mhm.
Sometimes irreversible. So if nothing else changes your mind, just think when I'm, a little older and my body finally breaks down from this, what am I going to have to deal with? It's a different sort of self-preservation for your health.
For sure, because we all know that stress and trauma affect bodies, right? We all know that. So, one of the reasons I went no contact was because I had to reduce the stress that was in my life. And this was a stressor I could remove. And I made it clear, like, I cannot have this stress because of my health, because my health is directly related to the amount of stress that I have. My pain would actually be elevated. I could physically feel it start elevating the moment I started stressing about this, relationship or the communication, or if I was trying to get the person to understand something, like, as my stress I would, and then it would be days. It would be days it would take me to recover it. So, I know I've kind of talked about it here and there, but I still haven't gotten a definitive diagnosis, but they do think I have fibromyalgia, and anyone who knows anything about fibromyalgia, stress is a definite trigger for pain, but it was so like an out of body experience, like, when I had a conflict with this person right after I went no contact and there was forced contact, I could feel in my body the pain level rising. And when I put that boundary back down and was like, "You crossed the boundary, that was unacceptable." It took a while, but I was able to see that lack of stress was helping me heal. And it was so bizarre. It was like I did not realize how much that was affecting me physically.
Hmm. I would also say it'll help you with your sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Anxiety kept me from sleeping. Also, I didn't know how many different physical ailments can be affected by stress. So, yeah, you say, okay, yeah, stress is bad for you, right? It raises your cortisol and that's bad for you. But I didn't realize how many long term autoimmune diseases connected to that and what
Mhm.
kind of symptoms they had. I just didn't know how large of a world there is out there that of those things that it could cause in you. And it affects each person differently. So, in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, in general, it's not good for you, right? But it really can have some serious consequences. Yeah. Long-term
Yeah,
ones that you can't get out of later. Yeah.
exactly. And the amount, I mean, y'all are in the community if y'all are watching this, the amount of autoimmune diseases that survivors of these cults have is directly related through studies that have been proven that
Mhm.
trauma can affect this. There is a huge correlation with the trauma and the autoimmune diseases within this community, and it is absolutely like mind blowing how many people we know that
Mhm.
survived this cult who have
Mhm.
autoimmune issues. And it seems like the longer they were in it and the more severe the abuse was, the more severe autoimmune disease that they have. It's like, okay, we're not medical doctors and we can't say that there's a direct causation, but
Is in the pudding.
yes. So, and also we are not mental health experts, I should say that.
Yes,
And so
exactly. We are
anything that
not.
we say about mental
Mhm.
health is our own personal experience and from a
Just from an observer's point of view. We're just observing, patterns.
yeah, in our experience, and we are not experts on the subject whatsoever, but we've lived it with everything. There's benefits and there are deficits or pros and cons, right? And one of the things that a lot of the survivors in the groups had talked about was the loneliness. Depending on what family member or friend that you cut out of your life,
Mhm.
there may be birthdays, holidays, stuff like that that you're not going to be participating in. Your family may have those things without you, and you have to find alternative friends and family to hang out with on the holidays, or you may not have anyone. And being prepared I guess, thinking that through, right? Like, not that you wouldn't go no contact because you're gonna be lonely on the holidays, right? But knowing that that's something that you're gonna have to navigate during the holidays and preparing yourself for that. And then we're gonna go in a little bit into what to do to prepare yourself for that and how to surround yourself with support so those things don't hit you unexpectedly, right? If you expect them, you can prepare for them. So, and I'm trying to think like we had talked about it, like how other people respond to you is a negative, that a lot of people experience. Other people's lack of understanding of why you do what you do, thinking that you're being petty or vindictive when it's really a protection mode. And then people thinking that you just wake up one day and say, "Well, I'm not gonna talk to them anymore." And it's a very long drawn out process for most people, and they agonize over it. And so if you are someone who is on the receiving end of no contact, I would like for you to understand that this is not an easy decision that anybody I have ever talked to about that has gone no contact just did it on a whim. It is a very long drawn out process and it's contemplated for months, if not years. So do not dismiss the fact that this is an easy decision. It's not for any one of us that have done it. So there was one response that I found pretty interesting because it was the only response in the groups that gave an alternate perspective on the going no contact. So a lot of us have experienced when we were in the cult that we were isolated from family members who were not in the cult. And we lost relationships with extended families for periods of time or maybe even forever. and even missing out on family history, like medical history or just the history of what your family has done because you were so isolated from those family members. And one of the members of the group had talked about how that affected them growing up. And then they had decided to never go no contact with their parents so that their children wouldn't suffer the loss of those relationships. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And where I understand it to a certain extent, I know a lot of people have said it's one thing for me to have hurt, but for my children to be hurt by my parents or my siblings, or that's what I couldn't handle. And so a lot of people do go no contact to protect their children. And as long as, in my opinion, as long as your children are not being harmed by that person, I think it could be something that you could consider doing. It have to be a limited contact, right? Or it may have to be in only certain scenarios if you don't want your children to miss out on that relationship. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't use that experience, for me personally, as a reason to not go no contact, because you matter too. And if it's harming you and you need to be away from it, it's acceptable for you to make that decision, in my opinion.
Mhm. That one's a hard one when it comes to kids. I have a little bit of experience with that as far as if I let them have contact, it's not necessarily physical danger, but mental and emotional. And how much do I let them be exposed to that? And what would you damage and how much time would you damage and how much time wouldn't? And those are hard questions as a parent. Those and you don't have a for sure answer between whether yes, this is the right decision or no, this isn't, or no, they're not, they are being hurt or no, they aren't being hurt. Sometimes that can be really difficult to decide. My solution was limited, just limited. And then temperature monitor it every time the contact takes place. And if I see warning signs or red flags and I've learned what to look for, then we limit it more. We take the
Right.
number of days down. So yeah, and that's
Yeah.
hard. That's a hard balance.
Yeah, and, like, for example, when you're talking about, ex-husband that you have children with, right? Like, deciding, is it more damaging to sever the relationship completely, or is it more damaging for them to have exposure, and how much exposure? That's a very, very difficult position to be in, and those are
Yes.
some of the most difficult decisions I've had to make in my life were
Yes.
concerning that, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
And I asked opinions and advice from many different people when I was making those decisions, and everybody had a different opinion, and everybody's opinion had varying levels of not severity, but like intensity to them, right?
Yeah.
Some people were like, "You can't do this. This what are you thinking?" And other people were like, "Well, I don't know. Let's think this through. I bet it'll be fine." That kind of thing. There have been some other situations where limited contact was we just had rules in place when they were in contact. So the contact wasn't limited, but we had rules like boundaries that couldn't be crossed or people that had to be present. So no more than 2 hours and somebody else has to be there type of
Yeah.
thing. It could be limited, it could be small, or it could be big.
Yeah.
you know. hmm
Case by case basis, and,
Case by
you
case.
know,
Yeah. And
and
sometimes just
definitely
depending on how the person's doing at the time.
that too.
That you're concerned about. Yes. Time changes things. Age of the child
It
changes
does.
things.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, the smaller they are, the more vulnerable they are, and they can't
Yeah.
always communicate, and then, especially when you're talking about children with special needs, as some of us have,
Mhm.
them not being
Yes.
able to communicate
Mhm.
completely what's going on inside of them, all things to consider when you're talking about contact with innocent children and people who are harmful.
Yep. That
So,
has definitely changed my perspective, the neurodivergence that we have
oh, for sure.
come to know, that has changed how I handle those situations too. Mhm. Because it does make
Okay.
them vulnerable.
Right? I mean, the more vulnerable they are, the harder it is to make those decisions, and yeah.
Mhm.
So, next part is what to do to prepare yourself for going no contact, because a lot of people didn't prepare themselves, and that was a common theme in our responses. And we are examples of not being completely prepared for that no contact. And we'd like for you to learn from all of our lessons and do it better.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Support yourself a little better by knowing what, some pros and cons.
And some resources that you can use to better support
Mhm.
yourself going through it.
So, tips on getting through it, support is friends. So, let your friends know if you have close friends that are safe enough to tell these things to. Tell them what's happening and say, hey, this, for me, it was siblings. So that siblings gave good advice and they were able to listen to me when I said, this is so hard. So, and a therapist. So my therapist was the one that initially suggested it for me. And then it was both her and siblings that encouraged me over and 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 over again to do it. And that made it
Right.
possible for me to do because they had my back. And it took them a lot of suggestions for me to do it.
Mhm.
But I did eventually listen to them. So maybe you, even if you're not the one going no contact, but you know someone else that is needing to, I want to encourage you to keep saying those things. Don't just say it once or twice or three times or get frustrated because the person's not listening to you. And that's really what needs to happen. Keep being soft and gentle, keep suggesting it because
Mm.
eventually it's going to get through the fog. Because that's what happened, at least in some cases. That's what happened to me. That's my experience. It had to
Yeah.
be said multiple times.
So finding that person that's going to be on your side no matter what your decision is, right? Whether it is no
Exactly.
contact, limited
Mhm,
contact, or continued contact, and help
mhm,
you navigate the ins and outs of that. So
mhm.
even if it's just one person, family, friend, whatever, that is so important to at least have one person.
Yeah. Yeah. You need support. So we said friends, therapist, family that supports you, or partner that supports you with that.
Yeah. In my case, this most recent no contact, my husband was completely on board with my decision. And it was, like I said, it was one of those, I'm okay with whatever you decide. I will go along with whatever you want. So there wasn't any like pressure for me to go one way or the other from the person. And it wasn't going to change my relationship with my partner, my husband, if I made the decision either way. And I think that's so important to have somebody
So
that is going to be like, look, this is your life. You get to make this decision. Whatever it is, I support you and we're going to get through it together. Right.
yes. So a point that I thought of just now was my husband has helped me with limited contact. So if you have a situation where you're just doing limited, because there's so much history and so much emotion and so much trauma wrapped up in this relationship, that I oftentimes will want to respond in an emotional way. And no matter how hard I try to keep it, logical or
Mhm.
short and sweet, it never quite comes off that way to the other person or the way I'm writing. And so my way of dealing with that is to have him look at it. And he's a project manager, so
Yeah.
he can put it in business terms and make it be very short, very simple, and just very pointed. Just hit the logical base of what needs to be answered. He also encourages me, don't elaborate, because I like to elaborate on things.
Oh,
Don't
right.
elaborate. Keep it one sentence statements. And that has been a
Mhm.
huge help. Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause, you get into that spiral of trying to explain yourself
Yeah.
because that's what you
Yeah.
had to do when
Mhm.
it was way back when, and
Mhm.
you don't have to justify your decisions. You get to just say, "This
Oh,
is what it is, and
yes.
this is what's gonna be,"
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, that's
Mhm.
very important, like, if you have someone that can review your
Mhm. Yeah.
communication. And I did that with my husband. I was like, "Okay, this is what I'm thinking about sending. Could you
Mhm.
look at it? Does it sound mean?"
Yes. I've done that multiple times with siblings and then with husband. Yes. It's like, would you just look at this? Just be my second set of eyes,
Right? Because 'Cause I'm
please.
feeling very mean right now, and I don't want it to come through in
Yes.
this communication. So, yeah.
Yeah. Very
So
spicy. I'm feeling very spicy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that you can communicate without the anger and the hurt, and it sometimes can get through easier, and the person can receive it when it's not a garbled emotional mess,
Mhm.
and it's clear communication and it's concise, and the whole kiss, keep it simple, stupid,
Yes,
you
exactly.
know,
Yes.
or keep it simple for stupid, either
Yes,
way.
yes, that too. Yeah. The
So, some
next
other
one.
things that they recommended, and I hadn't even thought about, was things that you might want to collect and
Mhm.
write down and find out before you go no contact, like family medical history.
Yes.
So, if you have no contact with your parents or someone in your family that can tell you what diseases your grandparents had or stuff like that, that's very important when you get older to know what your family medical history is, because a lot of things are genetic. We realize that, there are people who have been adopted and may not know that stuff anyway. But if you have the ability and you can in a safe way, try and find out as much information as you can about your family medical history or any history that you might want to know when for your children to pass on to them, right? Photos, memorabilia from when you
Photos.
were a child.
Photos. Yes.
That was one of the main things. I wish I would have taken some childhood photos. I have nothing. Like, they have nothing to show their children about their childhood whatsoever. So, preparing all of that stuff before you go no contact, trying to get copies of that, or, whatever your family will allow you to have, or if it's a friend, stuff that, y'all shared, and maybe talk to them about getting that back.
Yep. So for me, that process, it was not directly related to no contact, but it was related to leaving. It felt sneaky. It felt very, very sneaky to me in that situation. But I'm so glad that I did it because come to find out it was much, much worse later. So in a way that I had not expected. So I'm really would encourage you to do that if you can.
Birth certificates, social security cards,
Yes, all those
definitely
things. Yeah.
passports, those kinds of things that are your documents. Now, you can
Hmm.
get duplicates and you can go and get these from Vital Records, but it is a process. So if you can
And it's, yeah.
access if you can get those before you leave, that is very important for your survival out in the world.
And it can be expensive too. So just keep that in
Mhm.
mind. Can be expensive
Right.
to get copies of those. Yeah. Yeah.
So there was also one person from the group that had mentioned that when they went no contact, they had documented all of the conversations that they had. They had built a file because they had to go and get a temporary restraining order, and I think they got a permanent restraining order on their parents because of the lack of ability for their parents to honor boundaries. So that is something to also consider in whatever situation you're in, is if you may have to go to court to protect yourself, document, 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 save everything you can that will show
Everything.
everything
Yes.
that can show
Mhm.
a pattern of abuse and potential harm to you. That goes with, if you're leaving the household, if you live there, make a safety plan.
Mhm.
Figure out where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, store away whatever money you need to that they don't have access to.
Extra car keys, a
Yeah.
phone they don't know about.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, documents, photos, anything that you might need to prove you are who you say you are. If you can get audio recordings without it being a safety issue for you, those are better than anything else. But write down things, take screenshots of text messages, make sure that in your text messages, if you have it labeled, like for example, I'm going to use the parent example again. If you have it labeled mom, you need to have it labeled with their name for it to
Government
be
name,
acceptable. Yeah, government name for it to be acceptable and submittable in court. So, um,
depending on the
yeah,
state. So also,
depending on the state, yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
research your
That's what you
state
wanna say.
laws.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because
It changes from
also,
state to state. Yeah.
yes, and also recording. can be illegal in some states if you don't have two-party consent.
So
I live in a one-party consent state, and I love it.
so do I. So do I. So do I. So yes, so be careful. I mean, research it, Google it. Yeah.
Mhm,
But know what you can and can't do.
for sure.
Yeah.
So, with that, is there anything that we missed? Please leave a comment. Let us know what your experience was with going no contact. Was it something that you needed to do for your safety? Was it something that you contemplated for a long time? I assume so. But share with us your experiences in the comments. We learn more from comments, I think, than anything else because
Yes.
everybody's experience is different. And it can help other survivors knowing how you went through your process because their process might not be similar to all of the things that we said. And they may learn something that they need to know to keep themselves safe or be able to process what they're going through. So please share. It's very, very important for us as survivors to share our stories and help others who are navigating things that we've already gone through.
Yes. If someone hasn't told you recently or ever, we are proud of you.